welcome back to Leadership Lessons. I am Dr. Fredrick D, and this is the podcast where we explore how emotional intelligence, leadership, and lived experience shape the way we grow, connect, and lead. Over the last two bonus episodes, we've been walking through a deeply human conversation about belief, resilience, and equity, all through the lens of Black women's experiences navigating breast cancer. In bonus episode 7, we talked about self-efficacy and resilience, that inner belief that says, I can influence my outcomes even when life feels uncertain. In bonus episode 8, we looked at race, gender, and trust, how intersectionality affects access, treatment, and the way people experience care. But today's conversation is different. Today, we're focusing on something that connects all of it, the thread that weaves belief, resilience, and healing together. That thread is emotional intelligence, the ability to recognize, understand, and manage emotions in ourselves and in others. Because healing, whether from illness, loss, or trauma, is not just a physical process. It's emotional, it's relational, and at its core, it's brilliant. Emotional intelligence is what allows us to regulate fear, build trust, and find clarity in the middle of chaos. It's what helps us move from surviving the moment to shaping what, and that's what today's episode is all about. How emotional intelligence helps us heal, lead, and transform from the inside out. Healing at its deepest level is not about returning to who we were before pain. It's about becoming someone wiser because of it. Through my dissertation research, I learned that Black women who exhibited strong self-efficacy and emotional resilience didn't just survive breast cancer, they redefined survival. They showed what I call the heart of healing, the point where emotional intelligence meets self-leadership. When fear shows up, self-awareness helps us name it. When uncertainty sets in, it's self-regulation that helps us find our grounding. When we feel alone, it's empathy that connects us to others who remind us we're not. And when we begin to see our story differently, it's motivation that gives us the energy to move forward. Not because the pain disappears, but because purpose takes its place. See, healing and leadership share the same DNA. Both require awareness, both demand courage, and both begin inside. Emotional intelligence teaches us that emotions aren't weaknesses, they're information. Every emotion we experience during crisis, fear, anger, grief, hope, carries data. It tells us where we are, what we need, and what matters most. When we suppress those emotions, we delay healing. But when we engage them with curiosity, we gain clarity and growth. Here's what research shows. People with higher emotional intelligence experience better stress regulation, stronger immune response, and more resilient coping during adversity. See, that's not just psychology. That's physiology. Our emotions are biologically wired to influence our healing. When we practice emotional awareness and self-regulation, our nervous system calms, our thinking clears, and our ability to hope returns. That's not abstract. That's leadership over self, over stress, over fear. But here's the other side. When emotional intelligence is missing, healing will stall. Without self-awareness, we ignore what's really hurting us. Without empathy, we disconnect from the people who can help us. Without self-regulation, we make decisions from fear instead of faith. In healthcare, we see this when providers treat symptoms instead of people. In leadership, we see it when managers focus on performance instead of purpose. And in our personal lives, we see it when we pretend to be fine while breaking on the inside. Emotional disconnection breeds isolation, and isolation is the enemy of healing. But emotional intelligence reconnects us to ourselves, to our communities, and to our humanity. That's the real work. That's the leadership behind healing. Self-leadership is where emotional intelligence becomes a daily practice. It's the quiet discipline of leading your own emotions, your mindset, and your energy before you lead anyone else. It sounds simple, but it's hard work, especially when you're tired, grieving, or trying to hold everything together. Here's what self-leadership through emotional intelligence looks like. Self-awareness, noticing when your emotions are driving your actions. Self-regulation, choosing how to respond instead of reacting from pain. Empathy, seeing others not as obstacles, but as humans trying to heal too. Motivation, reconnecting with your why when the how feels impossible. And social skill, building connection instead of control, creating safety for others to be seen and heard. That's not soft leadership. That's strategic leadership, because emotionally intelligent leaders create spaces where healing and performance coexist. Every episode of Leadership Lessons ends with change moves, those practical ways to apply what you've heard. Here are 5 that connect emotional intelligence to healing and self-leadership. First, feel, then frame. Before reacting, name what you're feeling. Labeling emotion helps you lead through it instead of being led by it. Self-awareness reduces reactivity and clarifies perspective. Slow the surge. Take one deep, intentional breath before responding under stress. Calm creates clarity. Self-regulation is leadership in motion. Ask before assuming. Empathy begins with curiosity, not conclusions. Ask what someone needs before you act. Empathy and inquiry strengthen trust and belonging. Anchor to purpose. When emotions rise, return to your why. Purpose gives you endurance when energy runs low. Motivation keeps you aligned when life gets loud. Model the calm. When you regulate your emotions, you give others permission to do the same. Healing multiplies through example. Emotional expression, modeled wisely, is leadership by presence. Healing begins with awareness. Leadership begins with emotional intelligence. As we close today, I want to remind you of something profound. Healing and leadership are not separate journeys. They're reflections of the same process, the transformation of pain into purpose. Through my dissertation research, I've learned that self-efficacy gives us belief, but emotional intelligence gives us balance. Belief gets us through the storm, but balance helps us rebuild after it. Every leader, every survivor, every human who's ever had to start over knows this truth. Healing doesn't erase the past. It redefines it. And when we practice emotional intelligence, when we lead with awareness, empathy, and intention, we become living proof that growth is possible even in the aftermath of pain. Subscribe to Leadership Lessons with Dr. Fredrick D II on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Amazon Music. You can also listen and learn more at leadershiplessons.transistor.fm. Until next time, be aware, be resilient, and lead with emotional intelligence. I'm Dr. Fredrick D II, and this has been your leadership lesson in life.